Virginia. Mr. Griffith, for your 5 minutes of probing questions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much, Madam Chair. Let me just say that, and I got to get this off my chest, we've been talking about negotiations, but we don't have negotiations in this bill. And that's the problem, because what we have is a system that says if you don't agree to the price dictated by the government, you can pay a tax of 65 to 95% of the gross revenues for that drug in order to be able to sell it within the United States. Now, I get very concerned about that, as I did 2 years ago, because when it comes to the constitutionality of a bill, it's not just the courts that have jurisdiction to determine that constitutionality. This committee and Congress also have a role and have a duty to determine whether or not we're passing bills that are constitutional. The courts may be the final arbiter of that question, but we have a duty to look at it too. And when you look at the concerns that were raised, not just by me 2 years ago, but by others, including the Congressional Research Service, we have Eighth Amendment concerns. While Congress has the power to levy taxes, that's not that levy is, or that ability is not without limitation, especially with regard to taxes that are actually more penalties or fines. And I think a court could reasonably find these taxes are, at least in part, punitive and therefore in violation of the Eighth Amendment of the Constitution. The one that I very first raised was the Fifth Amendment concern, and it's a takings clause, because when you say to somebody, you can't sell your intellectual property or your product in the United States unless you give us 65 to 95% of your gross sales, you're taking that property away from them. You're taking away their hard-earned intellectual property. And I have concerns about that. Now, I'm one of the people on the Republican side of the aisle that actually would consider negotiation, and I think we should have some negotiation ability. And I even have a bill in to do that in certain stressed areas. That being said, we have to do it in a constitutional manner. And Madam Chair, I just don't think this bill is constitutional. When you limit prices manufacturers can charge, and you say, you're being forced to accept the price for a drug, and that could mean significant economic loss for the developer because you're going to take not of the profit, but up to 95% of the gross sales. That's a taking, Madam Chair. And I know that everybody's trying to do the right thing. And you've heard that HR 19 has some positives from the witnesses, and we've heard that there are other positives. But if we're going to do the right thing, even when we disagree, let's at least do it constitutionally. Now, let me shift before I finish my tirade. Let me shift to HR 2843, because I think this one also has concerns. And I think we can all agree that FDA's citizen petition process can be very useful and must be implemented in a way that prevents abuse. And that bill, HR 2843, known as the Stop Games Act, seeks to address potential abuses. While I admire that goal, I remain concerned that the bill currently does nothing to resolve potential First Amendment issues, which I also currently raised back in 2019. Now, that deals with the First Amendment that guarantees the right to petition the U.S. government for redress of grievances. Yet, H.R. 2843 would allow the FDA to summarily deny, that is, to not even consider citizen petitions at its own discretion, even if they raise valid scientific or regulatory concerns. If there is a scientific basis for petitioning FDA that has not been considered previously and has been timely submitted, I believe the agency should have a timely process to review the petition and make a decision based on the merits. Now, Madam Chair, I think we can both agree, and I think all of us can agree, that we need to have a process that's a little quicker. And right now it is being used and gamed by certain parties in the system to make this process long and drawn out. But again, let's figure out a way we can fix that without completely eliminating the right to seek redress from the government by citizens who may have a legitimate concern. And there are bad actors, and we have to figure out, how we set that system up. But I will submit to you that HR 2843 is not the vehicle, as it is currently written, that we ought to do that with. So, Madam Chair, I hope as we work forward in this, as we go through subcommittee, as we go to full committee with actual bills and the bills that we're discussing today, that we're open to doing some amendments to try to make sure that we can even if I don't agree with it 100%, let's at least pass a product out of this committee that meets the constitutional test and that we can all feel comfortable is actually constitutional. And Madam Chair, my time is up and I yield back. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back, always thoughtful. The chair now